Daniel Tulian Meldanine, and thank you once again for joining me. My name is Lord Aramil, and today we'll be going into a more relaxed version, or not version, a more relaxed part of D&D. Yes, the drinking. The adventures start in a tavern, and they end in a tavern, so let's talk about this tavern. Why not? Just getting all of my things currently set up. And I have, of course, this lovely mug, glass, but unfortunately, as Daggerhair would say, it is broken, as in it is empty. So we'll fix that. Uh, now, Dr. Pepper. Perfect. Now, D&D and drinking go pretty hand in hand, partially because drinking itself is a human pastime of intense longevity. I believe. Now, don't quote me on the timeline because I can't remember the actual year, but there is an archaeological dig that found a brewery before we had proper agriculture. So people have been gathering items and fermenting them since before we were settled. Before recorded history, that's for sure. Which is insane and kind of cool. So there's a fun tidbit. Dr. Pepper. So today we'll talk about all this drinking in D&D context mainly because the historical context is done and dusted and it's all good. I will be pulling from the Arms and Equipment Guide once again. So this is a 3.0 book, I'll grant you, but I find it to be incredibly valuable just because of the sheer, not randomness, but the detail that this book goes into. Like, if you wanted to know how much a pound of tobacco costs, because your character is a strider-like ranger who smokes a long pipe in the corner of the tavern just to look, you know, thematic, you could learn that for 5 silver pieces, you can get a pound of tobacco. Cool. If your wizard wants to show how affluent he is, well, thank you, Claren. Yes, 13,000-year-old beer, which is, yeah, that sounds about right. Let's see here. Yes, so if you have a very affluent character, you can flex on other people by drinking coffee, which costs about 50 gold pieces a pound. Because, of course, these prices are set off of medieval Europe, and coffee is a, well, it doesn't grow very well in France. Take it as you will. But we're talking today about alcohol. So, let's read through this nice little list it gives of unique beers, ales, meads, and wines. So, we start with Aeolian wine, Elven. The grapes for this astounding wine are picked from wild vines located deep in the forest. It takes several months to find enough grapes to create even one batch. Fortitude save of 11. Cool, fine. Dragonbite Bitter. A dark beer that is a centuries-old recipe, and only the Dragonbite Brewery is able to reproduce it. Where is this brewery? I don't know, but you as a DM could find out. Dwarfhead Stout. Found almost exclusively in Dwarven communities, this powerful brew is a day-to-day beer favored by the warriors. Go. Frenzy Water. An extremely potent, clear alcohol. Rumors of bottles spontaneously catching fire when exposed to sunlight have never been proven. Anyone with the Rage class ability must make a will save, DC 15, to resist flying into a rage after drinking a tankard of this liquid. If you have already expended all of your rages for the day, then Frenzy Water has no additional effect other than making you irritable and surly. Or at least more so. Frost Wine. This delicate white wine is created from an exotic blend of grapes that only grow in extreme northerly climates. Frostworms in particular are drawn to the scent of frost wine grapes in bloom, making it dangerous to harvest. There's an entire adventure right there. Alright? Go off into this frigid wasteland. Find frost wine grapes. Defeat some frostworms, which are nasty. And then bring these grapes back. Garnet wine, Dwarven. Made from grapes found high in the mountains, this fine, if bold, wine includes at least 10 gold pieces worth of ground garnet for flavor, or to gently cut your throat on the way down, allowing more alcohol to seep into your bloodstream. Gnomish Golden Light. A fine, lightweight beer with flowery accents. This is a favorite trade item with humans and halflings. Orcish Crag. This spirit is popular among orcs and goblins. It is extremely powerful and tastes dreadful to the non-goblinoid palate. Drinking a tankard of this foul brew nauseates anyone who is not an orc, half-orc, goblin, or hobgoblin. Elven Mead. Although not normally famed for brewing, elves find exotic honey in their forest homes to create this delightful mead. Even dwarves find its taste appealing, though they are loath to admit it. Put a pin on that, because we're going to come back to this. Elven Moondrop. Exquisite beyond compare, this beverage can only be produced by someone with the alchemy skill, a DC 30. It is made through a bizarre process involving fresh dew and moonlight, and this is the kind of shit that I expect from just typical fantasy elves. Mushroom wine. Created by several different species that live below ground, there are many types of this wine. Prices range widely. And are we given a alright. Fortitude save DC 11 or 12, depending on the batch. And the cost actually it's pretty funny because the cost per bottle goes anywhere from 20 gold pieces to upwards of 130. So there's that. Posh Brown Ale. A halfling creation found among a few permanent halfling settlements that have acquired the taste of ale. It has a pleasant, nutty flavor. Drow Spider Blood. A slight misnomer, as this mushroom wine crafted by Drow includes a substantial dose of venom from poisonous spiders. Its taste is remarkable and unlike anything encountered on the surface world. Anyone not used to drinking this wine, usually a non-drow, must succeed on a fortitude save or be poisoned, in addition to making a fortitude save against intoxication. Those wishing to overcome this poisonous effect must drink 1 glass over several hours every day for 3 months, which is a fun little kind of an aside. Just you could take that and determine that's a good way of overcoming any specific type of poison. Which could be fun. Maybe your character wants to take the time and effort to become immune to a specific poison, and that's a way to do it. Talk to your DM, or be your DM. Figure it out. And finally, Thudrud, Goblin. almost universally avoided by non-goblinoid races, Thudrud has been described as having the taste and smell of, quote-unquote, a rotting cow that caught fire. It is favored by some barbarians as the drink of choice. Now, I gotta say that I enjoy all of that very much. I find it quite entertaining. Much better. And honestly, I think that it's important for even your average bar or tavern or inn to have something special. Like, it's one thing to, say he pours you an ale, whatever, fine. But give yourself a little bit of creative license, alright? Like, maybe the characters, order an ale. And the innkeeper will like, oh, you're in luck. I just got a barrel of, I don't know, what's the next town over? Riversford Ale. Some good stuff. And cool. It makes no difference to the characters, but the players will recognize that this is a little bit more world building. Riversford now is a place that produces ale. Cool. And for some players, that makes Riversford more important. Just because, okay, they're the ones with the booze. This is important. Alternatively, maybe, well, as an adventure hook, they could go in, order some beers, and the barkeeper's just like, I'm sorry, all of our beers generally come from such and such brewery, and they've been closed down for a couple weeks now because of some were rat infestation, or it's haunted, and now the players have a reason to go to this brewery and clear it out. I know at least one player who would take that as a personal affront and declare practically a crusade. Like, how dare they cut off the flow of booze into my mug? Get the point. Going back to our pin on Elven Meads, alright? This should not be a rare thing. I find it odd that you're more likely to find a mead in a Dwarven settlement than an Elven settlement. That doesn't make any sense. Yes, I can definitely get behind Elves as vintners, making wines. I think vintner is the right word. Yeah. Because just the idea of making an alcohol that takes, so long to become good, that's very elven. But also, mead is more or less, from my limited understanding, I'll admit, honey that has been fermented. Honey comes from bees. Bees pollinate flowers, not mushrooms. So the idea is that which of the two fantasy races are more likely to live near glades full of wildflowers? Elves or dwarves? Elves. It's definitely elves. Elves are definitely going to be closer to the source of honey than a dwarf. In sometimes literal cases, as I could definitely see elven beekeepers too. Just, I don't know, that just seems pretty on brand. Definitely, I could definitely see gnomish beekeepers. That is extremely on brand for gnomes, as far as I'm concerned. So, maybe halflings. I could also see halflings, but definitely gnomes. Definitely elves. I kind of imagine a few goblins trying and having kind of Winnie the Pooh-esque shenanigans. Uh, I can definitely see a bunch of goblins, and I'm going off on a tangent, but kind of making one of those seesaw-like things, and one goblin standing ready right beneath a hive, and another goblin just kind of chucking a heavy weight onto the other side and shooting the first goblin up into the hive. Like, I got the honey, but it's angry. Ah. I'm gonna be out of Dr. Pepper here far too soon. Oh well. But by and large, I feel like elves should be making mead far more often than dwarves. And if dwarves are making mead, there should be a damn good reason. Like, it's entirely possible that part of a dwarven settlement is above ground. I'm not going to say that it isn't possible. Uh, and if that above ground portion is in like an alpine valley where there's plenty of wildflowers and all that good stuff, I mean, I'd imagine that the dwarves would see that as a favorable location, just because, oh, here we go, we've got the makings of a meadery right here. It's like, good shit. All right, that's fine. But if this is one of those deep settlements, deep underground, they should not have mead, and they might, in fact, really, really want mead. So I'm not going to say that it's a adventure in and of itself to get the dwarves some mead, but you could see some merchants making the trip just to bring them, massive kegs of mead, uh, which could be fun either as, caravan guards or even as bandit loot between the dwarven settlement and the place that supplies the mead. A basic grasp of economics can really flesh out a campaign. Figure out the supply, the demand, and connect the dots. And actually, I should have, if I had already thought of that, I would bring up, there's an excellent, excellent Forgotten Realms map. Um, Whatever. Basically, just showing different trade routes, and it's really cool because I'm a nerd like that. So, if you are into those kinds of things, then it can be really helpful. If you're not, then don't sweat it too much. Just let your things make sense, and the game will unfold from there. Now, speaking of things making sense, we'll get into our second big talking point: bars, taverns, and inns. Because this frustrates me to no end. um, and I feel like it isn't said often enough. The three things that I just said are not interchangeable. Okay? These are separate establishments that are very different. Okay, so let's talk about bars really quick. Very easy, because most people have been to a real life bar. bars are for booze. Okay, they might serve a little bit of food, but you're not getting a full meal at a bar. This is where you go to get just anything, really. I mean, I'd say that this is a place that often has the best or the widest variety of booze, but that really depends on the place. And it could be, honestly, you could make a fantasy bar in a room roughly the size of my bedroom here. Okay, it does not have to be big. It has to be big enough for a counter, a couple of shelves, which might be part of the counter, for the uh, bartender to stand behind, and maybe some places for people to sit, maybe, or just, something for them to lean, a wall for them to lean against while they sip. Okay? Bars don't serve food, bars don't rent out rooms. They are purely places for people to gather and drink. And that's important because, and drinking in general is important because the booze might be safer than the water. Historically speaking, water sanitation was not great. So a lot of people drank really low alcohol content stuff just because that would kill off any bacteria in the water. And not that they knew it, just they knew that the booze was safe and the water wasn't. You get the point. Actually, they make a point of that in an Iron Kingdoms book. So Five Fingers, the Port of Deceit, because all of the water in and around the city. So the city's broken up into like 5 islands in kind of a river delta, which is really cool in and of itself. And it's kind of it was a pirate haven and it kind of is a pirate haven, but it's also like a pirate haven meets Las Vegas. All right. Um, the point is that they make kind of a sangria, basically, a fruity alcohol, because there aren't any wells, because it's like solid rock underneath them, and the rivers are, if not polluted, then just kind of nasty. Honestly, is the best way to put it. So everybody just drinks this like lightly alcoholic. I'm not even calling it a booze, but it's a fruit drink that's mildly alcoholic, and almost everybody drinks it. So, fun fact there. So, yeah, bars, pretty common, pretty easy to set up, pretty small. Well, it can be small. Next up, taverns. Taverns are like restaurants, okay? You want a good meal, you want a good place to, it's like Olive Garden, all right? Just, you go there, and no, taverns, I should say, that taverns can run the gamut between fancy restaurant and, you know, a small barn with a long table where, you sit down and you get served whatever is cooking. That's fair. A staple of a lot of medieval diets was it eternal stew. All right, so you just keep adding new things uh, to this cooking pot, which has been going for however many years. And if it's like a dwarven or, dare I say, even elven establishment, that cooking pot might be older than you. Like, the stew could technically be older than you. But, you just keep cycling new ingredients in and uh, just tweaking the flavor from one thing to the next. And, I mean, I'm sure it could be pretty good. So. But, so yeah, that's a tavern. Taverns also will not rent out a bedroom. Okay, now that I get really frustrated, alright, when either players ask me if they can rent out a room, or if I'm in a campaign and we go to a tavern and somebody tries to rent a bedroom, or when the DM allows us, because it's like going to White Castle or Olive Garden or whatever and trying to rent out a room. Like, yeah, there might be a private room, uh, but you can't sleep there. Excuse you, sir, this is a restaurant. um, just no. If you want to sleep, you go to an inn. Inns are where you get your sleeping. They're the places where the stable is. Okay, those are for travelers. Now, they might also have, aspects of a tavern, and they might also serve alcohol, probably, honestly. The tavern and inn probably serve at least a little bit of alcohol. Um, and based off of just, uh, what was it go? Oh, point is that if you want a room, you go to an inn. Okay? Okay. Now, if a town is large enough to have multiple establishments, okay, and this is kind of important, locals will prefer to go to a tavern or a bar over an inn. Inns are probably going to be more expensive by and large. They're hotels, basically. They're motels, all right? They are places for travelers. And as such, the locals will probably be more interested in local businesses, as opposed to going to an inn where the prices are higher and there's weird foreign folk. Keep this in mind. Now, of course, those weird foreign folk that might be a place where you could get some of the more exotic drinks and foods. So, maybe for a special day, if somebody has a particular liking to some foreign cuisine that the inn specializes in, you might, then, yeah, you get the idea. Alright. But if a town is large enough to have multiple, and like I said, with bars being as easy to set up, I mean, if we're going to talk about how easy it is to set up a bar, my brother sets up a bar for a week every year at Ragnarok while we're camping. Okay, unofficial bar, but still several $100s worth of alcohol, and just there you go, bar. So if he can set up a shantytown bar, then I imagine anything larger than a hamlet could probably set up at least two of these establishments. At the very least, a hamlet will have at least a bar. Okay? Now, if it's on a major trade route or anything like that, it probably has an inn. Now, slight note is that not always will the player characters have access to that inn. Historically speaking, especially in, I want to say Imperial China, definitely Imperial Japan, and I think the Roman Empire, there would be way stations for both the military and official couriers, etc. You get the point, where dignitaries and government officials could rest and replenish or get a new horse or what have you. Now, that kind of place will probably also be slightly on the edge of town. It's really not for the town. It's just like, okay, this is however far. I mean, that could be the reason the town is there, of course. Like if somebody looked out on a map and said, okay, a horse can gallop, this far before it gets, exhausted. So we're going to put a way station there, and, that's where we'll have fresh horses. That's genius. It takes a lot of planning, so it's really just, if you have an empire like the Chinese or the Romans or whatnot in your fantasy campaign, maybe that would be good. But they figure, if a horse can gallop this far before it's exhausted, so we'll have horses here and here and here and here, then a single courier could get across the empire in a shockingly short amount of time, which is admittedly less necessary in a D&D world where, whispering wind and sending and spells like that exist. But if it's in a lower magic, or if the couriers are carrying items, especially, then you can get away with it. Purely news based might not be as important, but it really depends on the magic level of your campaign. Uh, point though is that these way stations are not open to the players. Probably, I mean, they could be on official business, or maybe one of the characters uses that often overlooked and underutilized forgery skill to make some official documentation saying, like, yeah, we're supposed to be using this facility. And that could be really helpful, because guess what? They're not going to charge you. Hell, they might even just give you free horses because they assume that you're on official business. So, perks of either working in the bureaucracy or just being a really good rogue. Of course, if you're caught, then bad shit. But, that's the life of a rogue. So, there are a few different types of establishments. I was planning to just talk about the three, but I'm glad I included the way station as a fourth. I feel like that's overlooked and definitely underutilized in D&D. So, give me your thoughts. I really feel like drinking, for as central to both the genre and history, is really underutilized in many ways. It's very, and you get a beer and keep talking, and like, no, man, like, flavor it up. Come on, ham it up just a little bit, okay? Do a bit of acting, do a little bit of world building. You can do so much with so little. But, thank you, and I hope you've enjoyed this. So until next time, dear friends, Untitled Chapter, and farewell.